The dragon's arrival. The ceiling of room 412 exploded inward with the sound of thunder, sending chunks of concrete and twisted metal crashing onto the pristine hospital floor. Through the gaping hole descended something that shouldn't exist, a massive black dragon with wings that shimmered purple in the harsh fluorescent lighting. Dr. Harrison Mills froze in the doorway, his clipboard clattering to the ground. In his 30 years of medicine, he'd seen many things, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The creature's enormous form filled nearly half the room, its bat-like wings stretched wide as it hovered protectively over the hospital bed. In that bed lay Marcus Chen, a 24-year-old cargo pilot who'd been caught in a solar radiation storm 3 weeks ago. The diagnosis was cosmic ray syndrome, a death sentence with a 99.97% mortality rate. Marcus had been unconscious for days, his body slowly shutting down despite every treatment the hospital could offer. The dragon's piercing golden eyes fixed on Dr. Mills, who stood trembling in his white coat. "I must say," the doctor managed, his voice barely steady, "this is highly irregular. We don't typically allow visitors during end-of-life procedures, especially, your kind." The dragon, who had introduced himself centuries ago as Bartholomew but preferred Bart among friends, snorted softly. A small puff of smoke escaped his nostrils. "And I don't typically make house calls, doctor. Yet here we are." The monitors surrounding Marcus's bed beeped frantically, displaying the young man's failing vital signs. His oxygen levels were critical, his brain activity minimal. According to every medical protocol, there was nothing more to be done. "The paperwork has been processed," Dr. Mills said, edging toward the emergency button on the wall. "The family has said their goodbyes. The procedure is scheduled and approved." "There's nothing about that," Bart interrupted, his voice a low rumble that made the medical equipment vibrate. "I'm going to need you to cancel it." Dr. Mills's face went pale. "Impossible. The boy is suffering. His organs are shutting down. According to medical guidelines. Do you know what else is impossible?" Bart's voice dropped dangerously low. "Dragons. Yet here I am, having a chat in your sterile little room." Before the argument could continue, 3 things happened at once. The hospital's alarm system shrieked to life, Marcus's vital signs suddenly spiked in ways that defied medical explanation, and the hospital's AI announced over the intercom, "Attention all staff, an unauthorized entity has been detected in Ward 4. Please evacuate calmly while maintaining appropriate noise levels." Bart sighed, a sound like steam escaping from a pressure valve. Why is it never simple? Dr. Mills reached for the emergency button, but faster than should have been possible for such a large creature, Bart's tail whipped across the room and gently but firmly wrapped around the doctor's wrist. "I wouldn't," the dragon said softly. "He's not dying today." "But the syndrome is incurable," Dr. Mills protested. The only documented survivor was a deep space explorer named Commander Vale, and most believe that was a statistical error. Bart's eyes narrowed. "Do I look like I care about your statistics?" He released the doctor and turned his attention to Marcus. The young man's eyelids were beginning to flutter, consciousness trying to break through the heavy sedation he'd been given in preparation for his final moments. Bart leaned closer, his massive head nearly touching Marcus's shoulder. "Marcus," he murmured in a voice surprisingly gentle. "Time to wake up. We have places to be." Dr. Mills watched in disbelief as Marcus's vital signs continued to stabilize. "This is impossible," he whispered. Then, with the decisiveness that comes from decades of medical practice and a healthy respect for fire-breathing creatures, Dr. Mills made a choice. "I'll give you some privacy. I need to consult with colleagues." He backed out of the room and then turned and ran, his coat flapping behind him like the wings of a much less impressive creature than the one he was fleeing from. Alone with the semi-conscious young man, Bart allowed himself a small smile. "Phase 1 complete," he muttered, carefully beginning to disconnect the monitoring equipment with surprising delicacy. "Now for the tricky part." The sound of security boots echoed down the corridor outside as Bart prepared for what was definitely not going to be a routine hospital discharge. The Great Escape. Heavy footsteps thundered down the corridor as Bart carefully wrapped his wings around Marcus's fragile form. The young man's eyes opened fully for the first time in days, focusing on the impossible creature before him. "You're real," Marcus whispered, his voice rough from disuse. "I thought you were just hallucinations from the medication." "I get that a lot," Bart replied with surprising warmth. "Hold tight, this might get bumpy." The hospital's AI chimed in again. "To the large reptilian entity in room 412, the administration respectfully requests that you cease current activities and report to security. If you're experiencing territorial or mating instincts, we have several volcanic simulation chambers available in our therapeutic wing." Bart ignored the announcement, focusing on gathering Marcus without disturbing the remaining medical equipment. As he did, a squad of security guards burst into the hallway outside, their voices echoing through the door. "Remember, non-lethal force only," someone shouted. "Corporate wants this thing alive for study." "That's my cue," Bart muttered. With a powerful thrust of his wings, he launched himself and Marcus upward through the hole in the ceiling, sending a fresh shower of debris onto the bed below. They emerged into the artificial sky of the habitat dome that enclosed the hospital complex. The false sun blazed overhead as alarms blared from every direction. Marcus, now fully awake and apparently unconcerned about being carried by a mythological creature, squinted against the light. "Where are we going?" he asked. "To find the only person in the galaxy who's survived what you have," Bart replied, banking sharply to avoid a flock of messenger drones. "And then maybe save your species, if we can fit it into our schedule." "Commander Vale?" Marcus asked, surprising Bart with his knowledge. "Well," Bart chuckled, sending small puffs of smoke trailing behind them, "that's what his official records say. But between you and me, the commander has been several different people over the past few centuries. Currently calls himself Alexander." As they soared over the pristine medical complexes, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since his diagnosis: hope. "Won't they come after us?" Bart's laugh boomed across the dome. "Oh, absolutely. But they'll be looking for a dragon and a dying man." His form shimmered, scales rippling like water, and suddenly Marcus found himself being carried not by a massive dragon, but by what appeared to be a standard medical transport vehicle, albeit one with distinctly golden reptilian eyes. "Perception field manipulation," Bart's voice explained from hidden speakers. "Basic stuff, really. Standard equipment for most ancient, supposedly mythical beings. Now stay quiet, we need to reach docking bay 12 without attracting attention." They glided along designated flight paths, passing through security checkpoints with ease. Each automated scanner registered them as a routine medical transport and waved them through with pleasant chimes. "Where's docking bay 12? Marcus whispered, conscious of the pedestrians below who might wonder why a medical transport was carrying a patient in nothing but a hospital gown. "Southeast quadrant. My ship's waiting there." "You have a ship? I thought dragons flew between planets." "Even dragons have their limits," Bart replied. "Interstellar travel requires a bit more than wingspan and attitude." As they approached the final checkpoint separating the medical district from the spaceport, an alarm suddenly shrieked. Red lights flashed, and a metallic voice announced, "Unauthorized patient transport detected. Security Protocol 51 engaged. Please remain stationary for verification." "Ah," Bart said calmly. "It seems they've noticed our missing patient sooner than expected. Time for Plan B." "What's Plan B?" Marcus asked nervously as security drones converged on their position. "Like Plan A, but with more fire and less politeness." The perception field collapsed, revealing the dragon once more, though in a more compact form suitable for navigating station corridors. Several pedestrians screamed and dove for cover. "Sorry about this," Bart announced to no one in particular before inhaling deeply and exhaling a controlled stream of flame that melted the security barrier into bubbling slag. They charged through the molten opening, pursued by security drones firing containment nets and tranquilizer darts that bounced harmlessly off Bart's scales. Marcus, now fully committed to this insane escape, found himself laughing despite the danger. "This is completely insane," he shouted over the wailing alarms. "Welcome to the rest of your life," Bart replied cheerfully, taking a sharp turn down a maintenance corridor. "Assuming we survive the next few minutes, of course." The corridor led to a small auxiliary dock where the most unusual ship Marcus had ever seen waited for them. It looked like a cargo hauler that had been rebuilt with mismatched parts, a vessel that had survived far too many disasters and been repaired with whatever was available. The name, Second Chance, was painted on the side in slightly crooked letters. "That's your ship?" Marcus asked, unable to hide his doubt. "Don't judge her by appearances," Bart said defensively as they approached. "She's gotten me out of 47 impossible situations." Well, 46, the Rigel incident was technically a draw. The loading ramp descended automatically, and Bart rushed inside with Marcus still clutched safely in his arms. The interior was a bewildering mix of advanced technology and antique furniture, as if someone had tried to build a starship inside a cozy living room. "Strap in," Bart instructed, depositing Marcus in the co-pilot seat, an ornate wooden chair bolted to the floor and fitted with safety harnesses. "Alexander!" Bart called out. "We've got company and a passenger." Hospital security is about to become very persistent. A holographic face materialized above the control console, an older man with a magnificent beard and eyes that seemed far too old for his face. "You brought the boy, then?" "Excellent," Alexander said. "And how many security forces are pursuing us?" "Fewer than last time," Bart replied, settling into a leather armchair that creaked alarmingly under his weight. "But they'll be here momentarily." As if summoned by his words, the sound of boots on metal echoed from the docking bay, followed by a voice amplified by megaphone, "Attention unidentified vessel, by order of station security, release the patient immediately. Failure to comply will result in forced boarding." Alexander cut off the external audio with a dismissive gesture. "They always feel the need to make speeches," he sighed, engaging the ship's systems. Emergency departure protocols initiated. The engines roared to life, the ship shuddered violently, and then launched itself not upward, but sideways, crashing directly through the docking bay wall and into the space beyond the habitat dome. "That's not standard procedure," Marcus yelled as debris bounced off the viewports. "Standard procedures leave records," Alexander explained calmly. "This way, they won't know our trajectory for at least 20 seconds. 20 seconds is enough?" Marcus asked, gripping his chair as the ship spun and accelerated away from the medical station. Bart grinned, showing rows of surprisingly white teeth. "When you have an experimental dimensional drive, more than enough." Before Marcus could ask what a dimensional drive was, a question that would have violated several galactic transportation laws just by being asked, the view screen filled with a swirling vortex of impossible colors. Reality folded in ways that made Marcus's stomach protest, and suddenly they were somewhere else entirely. The busy space around the medical station was gone, replaced by the serene emptiness of deep space with unfamiliar constellations twinkling in the void. "Where are we?" Marcus asked as the ship's system stabilized. "About 3 sectors away from where we started," Alexander replied. "And roughly 700 years in the past, temporally speaking. Don't worry, we'll sync back up with normal time once we reach our destination." Marcus stared at the impossible view, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. "This is all real, isn't it? You really did just rescue me from my deathbed and kidnap me through time and space." "Rescue, yes. Kidnap?" Bart considered this. "More like, aggressive medical consultation. You see, Marcus, there are things about your condition, and about the universe, that your doctors don't understand. But Alexander here does." The holographic man smiled kindly. "Indeed I do, young Marcus. After all, I've had quite some time to study cosmic ray syndrome. Being its first survivor and all." As the ship hummed through the star-filled void, Marcus began to understand that his real journey was just beginning. The Immortal's Tale. The ship, Second Chance, drifted through a nebula that painted space in shades of purple and gold. Marcus had been aboard for 3 days now, and each day brought revelations that challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe. Alexander's hologram flickered as he materialized in the main cabin, looking more solid than any projection Marcus had ever seen. The man appeared to be in his 50s, but his eyes held the weight of centuries. "Feeling better?" Alexander asked, noting that Marcus was sitting up without assistance for the first time since the rescue. Marcus flexed his fingers, amazed at the strength returning to his body. "The pain is almost gone." "How is that possible?" "My doctor said I had days, maybe hours left." "Your doctors," Alexander said gently, "were working with incomplete information. They understand cosmic ray syndrome as a disease. But it's not a disease, Marcus, it's a transformation." Bart, who had been lounging in his oversized chair reading what appeared to be a cookbook titled, Flame-Broiled Delicacies of the Outer Rim, looked up with interest. "Story time already?" "It's time," he understood, Alexander replied. He gestured, and the ship's main viewscreen shimmered to life, displaying star charts and medical data. "Marcus, what do you know about the radiation storm that affected you?" "Solar flare activity," Marcus said. "Caught my cargo run between Mars and the belt. My ship's shielding failed for maybe 10 minutes before I could restore it." "And what do your medical records say about the radiation you were exposed to?" Marcus frowned, trying to remember the technical details. "High-energy cosmic particles," they said. "Cellular damage at the molecular level. Irreversible breakdown of nervous system function." Alexander nodded. "All true, as far as it goes. But what they didn't tell you, what they couldn't tell you because they don't know, is where those cosmic rays originated." The view screen shifted, showing a section of space that looked different from anything Marcus had seen. Stars seemed to pulse with their own rhythm, and strange geometric patterns wove between them like cosmic spiderwebs. "This is the Nexus region," Alexander explained. "A place where our universe touches something else, something older. The radiation you were exposed to didn't just come from a solar flare, Marcus. It came from there." "I don't understand," Marcus said, though part of him was beginning to. "The radiation isn't killing you," Bart interjected, closing his cookbook. "It's trying to evolve you. Your species isn't quite ready for that kind of change. Most humans who get exposed die because their biology can't handle the transformation. But some, very few, adapt." Alexander's expression grew distant. "I was the first recorded case, nearly 300 years ago. I was a deep space explorer, testing new engine designs near what we now call the Nexus. My ship was caught in what seemed like a cosmic storm." The view screen showed an image of a younger Alexander standing beside a sleek exploration vessel. He looked perhaps 30, with dark hair and the confident smile of someone who believed the universe held no mysteries he couldn't solve. "I should have died," Alexander continued. "By all rights, I should have been dead within hours. Instead, I lingered for weeks in a medical facility, dying slowly. The pain was considerable." "What happened?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew part of the answer. "I stopped aging," Alexander said simply. "The cellular damage reversed itself. My neural pathways began operating at enhanced levels. I became, for lack of a better term, post-human." Marcus stared at the hologram, understanding flooding through him. "You're immortal." "I prefer, indefinitely life extended," Alexander corrected with a slight smile. "Immortal suggests invulnerability, which I most certainly am not. I can be injured, I can feel pain, and I suspect that under the right circumstances, I could still die. I simply don't age, and my body heals from most damage." "But why rescue me?" Marcus asked. "If this transformation is so rare, why risk exposure by breaking into a hospital?" Bart and Alexander exchanged a look that Marcus was learning to recognize, the expression of two very old beings sharing a secret. "Because," Bart said carefully, "you're not the only one. In the past 50 years, cosmic ray syndrome cases have increased by 400%. The Nexus region is expanding, and more humans are being exposed to transformative radiation. Most still die, Alexander added. But some survive. And those who survive, well, they need guidance. They need to understand what they're becoming. The view screen changed again, showing a star map with dozens of highlighted points. These are confirmed survival cases in the past decade, Alexander explained. 12 individuals scattered across human space, all dealing with the same transformation you're experiencing. Marcus felt overwhelmed. There are others like us. Like us, Alexander confirmed. And that's why Bart and I have been traveling together for the past century. He finds the survivors, I help them understand their new existence. It's become something of a calling. But why does a dragon care about human evolution? Marcus asked, turning to Bart. Bart was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the nebula swirling past the ship. When he finally spoke, his voice held an unexpected sadness. Because I'm not really a dragon, Marcus. I mean, I am now, but I wasn't born one. He looked directly at Marcus with those golden eyes. I was human once, about 2,000 years ago. One of the first to be transformed by exposure to the Nexus energy. The silence that followed this revelation stretched for several heartbeats. 2,000 years. Marcus whispered. Give or take a century, Bart said with forced lightness. Time becomes flexible when you live long enough. The dragon form, it happened gradually. The transformation affects different people in different ways. Alexander stopped aging and gained enhanced mental abilities. I became something else entirely. But you chose to help others going through the same thing. We all have a choice, Alexander said. The transformation gives us extended life and enhanced abilities, but it doesn't tell us what to do with them. Some survivors become recluses, hiding from a universe that would fear them if it knew what they were. Others try to use their abilities for personal gain. And you two decided to become cosmic social workers, Marcus said, a smile tugging at his lips despite everything. Bart laughed, a sound like controlled thunder. When you put it that way, it does sound rather ridiculous. But yes, essentially. We find the survivors and help them adjust. We teach them to control their new abilities, to understand what they've become. Speaking of which, Alexander said, we should discuss what you can expect. The physical improvements will continue for several more weeks. Enhanced strength, improved reflexes, dramatically increased healing rate. Your mental processes will also accelerate, you'll find yourself thinking faster, making connections you never could before. And then? Then you'll have the same choice we all face, Bart said. What to do with centuries or millennia of life stretching ahead of you. Marcus looked between his two unlikely rescuers, a dragon who had once been human and a man who had stopped aging 3 centuries ago, and realized that his old life was truly over. But for the first time since his diagnosis, that didn't terrify him. Where are we going now? He asked. To meet the others, Alexander replied. There's a place, hidden from normal human space, where the survivors gather when they need sanctuary or guidance. It's time you met your new family, Marcus. As the ship changed course toward coordinates that existed in no official star chart, Marcus watched the nebula swirl past and wondered what other impossible things he was about to discover. The hidden sanctuary. The space around them seemed to shimmer and fold as the second chance approached coordinates that shouldn't have existed. One moment they were traveling through empty void, and the next, a massive structure materialized before them as if it had always been there. Welcome, Alexander said, to Haven Station. Marcus pressed his face to the viewport, staring in amazement. The station was unlike anything in his experience as a cargo pilot. It appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves and flowing lines that suggested some form of bioengineering far beyond human technology. Crystalline spires jutted from its surface, pulsing with soft bioluminescent light. It's beautiful, Marcus breathed. How is it hidden? Nexus technology, Bart explained as he guided the ship toward a docking bay that opened like a blooming flower. The station exists in a fold of space-time. Invisible to conventional sensors, unreachable by standard navigation. Only those who've been transformed can find it. As they docked, Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation, as if the station itself was aware of his presence. The sensation was oddly comforting, like being welcomed home by an old friend. The docking bay was vast and filled with ships of designs Marcus had never seen. Some looked vaguely human in origin but heavily modified, while others appeared to be of completely alien construction. "Who else is here?" Marcus asked as they disembarked. "You'll see," Alexander said with a mysterious smile. They walked through corridors that seemed to pulse gently with their own inner light. The walls were smooth and warm to the touch, and Marcus could swear he felt a heartbeat thrumming through them. "The station is alive," Bart confirmed, noticing Marcus's expression. "Not sentient, exactly, but organic. It was grown from Nexus-touched materials by some of our more scientifically inclined members." They emerged into a central chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The room was enormous, with a transparent ceiling that offered a spectacular view of the nebula beyond. But it was the occupants that truly amazed him. There were perhaps 20 individuals scattered throughout the space, and no two were alike. Near a garden of impossible plants sat a woman whose skin seemed to shift between different metallic hues. Across the room, a man floated cross-legged in mid-air, his eyes closed in meditation, small objects orbiting around him like personal satellites. "Marcus!" A young voice called out, and he turned to see a girl who couldn't have been more than 16 approaching them. Her hair moved as if underwater, and her eyes held flecks of starlight. "This is Luna," Alexander said. "One of our more recent arrivals. You're the cargo pilot Bart rescued." Luna said excitedly. "We felt you arrive, the station told us you were coming." "The station, told you?" "Oh yes," Luna said as if this were perfectly normal. "Haven responds to all of us. It's how we know when someone new is approaching, or when someone needs help." Bart gestured toward the various groups scattered around the chamber. "Each person here has undergone the transformation, but as you can see, it affects everyone differently. The common factors are extended lifespan and enhanced abilities, but the specific manifestations are unique to the individual." A tall man with silver eyes approached them. His movements were impossibly graceful, and Marcus noticed that he cast no shadow. "Welcome, Marcus," the man said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. "I'm David. I was a physicist before my transformation, about 40 years ago. Now I study the nature of spacetime itself." "What happened to you?" Marcus asked, fascinated despite his nervousness. David smiled. "I seem to exist slightly out of phase with normal reality. It allows me to observe quantum phenomena directly, to see the underlying structure of the universe. Quite useful for research, though it makes shaking hands rather challenging." As if to demonstrate, David extended his hand, and Marcus watched his own fingers pass right through it. "Don't worry," Luna said cheerfully. "You'll develop your own abilities soon enough. The transformation is still working on you, we can all sense it." Over the following hours, Marcus met others, Elena, who could manipulate electromagnetic fields and had created much of the station's technology, James, whose mind could interface directly with computer systems, Sarah, who could perceive and manipulate probability streams, and others, each adapted in their own remarkable way. "But why hide here?" Marcus asked during what passed for dinner, a meal that included foods he'd never seen before, some of which seemed to glow with their own inner light. "Why not share this knowledge with humanity?" Alexander, now appearing in physical form rather than as a hologram, set down his cup thoughtfully. "What do you think would happen if the general human population learned about us?" Marcus considered this. "Fear, probably. Maybe attempts to study or control us." "Exactly," said Elena, her metallic skin shifting to bronze in the chamber's soft light. "We've seen it before. Governments that try to weaponize us, corporations that want to exploit our abilities, religious groups that declare us either divine or demonic. Some of us tried integration, added James, his eyes flickering with data streams only he could see. It rarely ends well. Humans aren't quite ready to accept post-human evolution. Give them another century or two. So you just, wait. We help, Bart corrected. We find others like you and give them choices. We research the Nexus phenomenon to better understand what's happening to our species. And when the time is right, we'll serve as bridges between old humanity and whatever we're becoming. Sarah, the probability manipulator, looked up from her meal with an odd expression. Speaking of which, we may have a problem. The chamber fell quiet, all attention focused on her. I've been monitoring probability streams related to Nexus exposure incidents, Sarah continued. The pattern is accelerating faster than we anticipated. In the next 5 years, exposure cases will increase exponentially. How exponentially? Alexander asked, his expression growing concerned. Conservative estimate? 10,000 new cases annually by the end of the decade. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. 10,000, Luna whispered. We can't possibly help that many individuals one at a time. No, Alexander agreed. We can't. Which means we need to consider alternatives we've been avoiding. Such as? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. Public revelation, David said, his out-of-phase voice carrying a note of inevitability. If the transformation is becoming this common, hiding is no longer sustainable. Humanity will learn about post-human evolution whether we guide that process or not. The question, Bart said, his dragon form shifting restlessly, is whether we reveal ourselves on our terms, or wait for someone else to do it for us. Elena stood, her skin shifting to a determined steel blue. I vote for taking control of the narrative. If we're going to be exposed anyway, better to do it ourselves with proper context and education. Agreed, said James. I can prepare information networks, control the data flow to prevent panic. One by one, the others voiced their agreement, until all eyes turned to Alexander. As the eldest and most experienced among them, his opinion carried significant weight. Very well, he said finally. We prepare for disclosure. But carefully, gradually, and with safeguards in place for both sides. He looked at Marcus. I'm afraid your quiet integration period is about to be cut short, young friend. We're going to need all hands for what comes next. Marcus felt a mixture of fear and excitement. He'd wanted to understand his place in the universe, and now it seemed he was about to help reshape humanity's understanding of itself. What's the first step? He asked. Alexander smiled, the expression both kind and determined. We contact the outside world. Time to introduce ourselves properly. As the chamber filled with the excited buzz of planning and preparation, Marcus realized that his rescue from the hospital had been only the beginning. Now came the real adventure, helping two species, human and post-human, learn to coexist in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than either had imagined. The new beginning. 6 months after his rescue from the hospital, Marcus stood in the communications center of Haven Station, watching history unfold on dozens of screens. The revelation had begun 3 days ago with carefully orchestrated appearances across human space, post-humans demonstrating their abilities in controlled, non-threatening ways while Alexander served as spokesman for their kind. The reaction had been everything they'd expected and more. Fear, wonder, skepticism, religious fervor, scientific excitement, and political maneuvering all swirled together in a storm of human emotion that played out across news feeds throughout the galaxy. How are the integration sites performing? Marcus asked Elena, who was monitoring data streams from her biotechnological interface. Better than projected, she replied, her skin shifting to a pleased golden hue. The medical centers we've established are handling the new transformation cases well. Having experienced post-humans available to guide the process has reduced the mortality rate to less than 12%. Marcus nodded, still amazed by how much had changed. His own transformation had stabilized weeks ago, leaving him with enhanced physical abilities and a mental clarity that sometimes felt like seeing the universe in high definition for the first time. He discovered his particular gift was an intuitive understanding of spatial relationships, useful for navigation and engineering, and surprisingly helpful in mediating disputes between different post-human communities. Incoming transmission from Earth Central, Luna announced, her star-flecked eyes reflecting the data streams only she could perceive directly. Priority 1 classification. Alexander materialized beside them, his physical form now permanently maintained at Haven Station. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a conference room filled with officials Marcus recognized from news broadcasts, representatives from the United Earth Government, the Mars Colonial Authority, and the Outer System Alliance. Dr. Alexander, the lead official began, a stern woman with silver hair and calculating eyes. I'm Director Sarah Chen of the Interplanetary Relations Council. We need to discuss the situation. Director Chen, Alexander replied with diplomatic calm. I appreciate the opportunity for dialogue. What specific aspects of the situation concern you? Let's start with the fact that you've been hiding from human government for centuries, Director Chen said bluntly. We have populations on dozens of worlds demanding answers about these post-human transformations. Some are calling for registration and monitoring, others want protection from what they see as a threat. And what does the Council want? Alexander asked. Cooperation, Director Chen replied. We propose a formal treaty, recognition of post-human rights and autonomy in exchange for transparency and mutual assistance in managing the transformation crisis. Marcus felt a surge of hope. This was better than they'd dared expect. We're willing to discuss terms, Alexander said carefully. But we have conditions of our own. Over the next 2 hours, they negotiated the framework of what would become known as the Haven Accords. Post-humans would establish formal embassy stations in major human systems, provide medical assistance for transformation cases, and share certain technologies that could benefit humanity. In return, they would receive legal recognition, protection from discrimination, and the right to maintain their hidden sanctuaries. When the transmission ended, the station's inhabitants gathered in the central chamber to discuss the implications. It's a start, Bart said, his dragon form coiled comfortably around one of the crystalline pillars. Better than war, certainly. The younger generations of humans are adapting faster than expected, James reported, his consciousness flickering between multiple data networks simultaneously. Social media sentiment shows increasing acceptance, especially among those under 30. And the opposition? David asked, his out-of-phase form shimmering slightly. Predictable, Sarah said, her probability stream showing various potential futures. Religious extremists, political opportunists, and those who profit from the current medical system's inability to treat transformation cases. But they're outnumbered by the curious and the pragmatic. Luna, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly perked up. The station is receiving new signals, she announced. Survivors are reaching out from across human space. Word is spreading faster than we anticipated. Over the following weeks, Haven Station became the center of a growing network. New post-humans arrived daily, some rescued by teams like Bart and Alexander, others who had found their own way after hearing about the revelation. The station expanded to accommodate them, its organic structure growing new quarters and facilities as needed. Marcus found himself assigned to one of the outreach teams, using his spatial abilities to help locate and rescue transformation survivors in remote areas of space. It was dangerous work. Not all human authorities were as cooperative as the Interplanetary Relations Council, but deeply rewarding. 3 months after the accords were signed, Marcus stood in his quarters aboard Haven Station, preparing for his latest mission. His reflection in the mirror showed the changes the transformation had wrought, his eyes now held flecks of the same starlight he'd seen in Luna's, and his movements carried a precision and grace that had nothing to do with practice. A soft chime announced a visitor, and Bart's voice called through the door. Ready for another rescue mission? Marcus smiled, gathering his equipment. Always. Where are we heading this time? Mining colony in the Vega system, Bart replied as Marcus stepped into the corridor. 3 confirmed cases, local authorities are being uncooperative. Any particular reason? They think post-humans are a threat to colony security. Apparently, one of the transformed miners accidentally restructured part of the mine shaft when his abilities manifested. Marcus chuckled. Accidentally improved their mining efficiency, more likely. Probably. But fear makes people irrational. That's why they need us. As they walked toward the docking bay where the second chance waited, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed. 6 months ago, he'd been dying alone in a hospital room, convinced his story was ending. Instead, he discovered it was just beginning. Bart, he said as they boarded the ship, do you ever regret it? The transformation, I mean. Becoming something beyond human. The dragon considered this as he settled into his pilot's chair. I regret the isolation it sometimes brings, he said finally. The knowledge that I'll outlive most of the people I care about. But regret the abilities? The chance to help others through the same transition? Never. Alexander's hologram flickered to life as the ship disengaged from Haven Station. Course laid in for Vega, he announced. Travel time, 4 days. I've prepared briefing materials on the colony situation. As the ship slipped into dimensional fold space, Marcus watched Haven Station disappear behind them, though he knew it would always be there when they needed to return. The station had become more than a sanctuary, it was a symbol of what humanity was becoming, and what it could achieve when it embraced change rather than fearing it. You know, Marcus said as the swirling colors of folded space surrounded them, I think we're going to change the universe. We already are, Bart replied with a rumbling chuckle. One rescue at a time. In the depths of space, other transformation survivors were awakening to their new abilities, guided by the knowledge that they were not alone. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but bright with possibility, a future where humanity would evolve beyond its current limitations, reaching towards something greater than it had ever imagined. Marcus Chen, former cargo pilot and current bridge between 2 phases of human existence, settled back in his chair and smiled. His real journey was just beginning, and for the first time in his life, he couldn't wait to see what came next. The end.